Moving over to Chelsea, who have finally agreed a front of shirt deal with Damac until the end of the season. How much is that likely to be worth, and can we expect that now to be their shirt sponsor moving forward? What's the deal look like?
Isn't it a strange one? I mean, 4 games left, and apparently it's also going to
Bizarre.
go on the women's team as well. Look, I'm pretty sure zero money changed hands on this deal. As I understand it, it's what we would call a VIK deal, which is value in kind, and it relates to a project that Damac is doing. Apparently, it's about 1,400 apartments in Dubai that has a football theme, and part of it has a Chelsea branding. So I'd imagine that that's the sort of trade-off that Chelsea are accepting in some sort of deal here in terms of swapping of revenues, that Chelsea aren't paying a lot of cash for the branding down in Dubai. They're giving a lot of it in terms of the shirt valuation, which they've given to the Damac as a deal. So I don't think much cash will change hands. I mean, there's only 4 games. It's not worth much. It's not even including the Club World Cup, which would have made more sense, I would have thought. But it doesn't include that as far as I understand it. So it's a little bit strange and slightly embarrassing, if you ask me, about having that suddenly come onto the shirt with 4 games to go. But I suppose there's publicity. We're all talking about it, and so it works from the Damac point of view. But it's not the greatest activation I've ever seen, to be honest, with 4 games to go.
And the Rugby Football Union is open to Chelsea playing at Twickenham if they were to rebuild Stamford Bridge. Is this the ideal solution for the club? Seems a bit far from home.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of things here that come into this when I looked at it. I mean, the issues around Twickenham. Twickenham has hosted some matches before and some other things besides rugby union. It's a great stadium. Twickenham is quite away from Chelsea, but not too far. I mean, they've handled big games, so they've got the transportation links to do it. But the local council in Richmond are apparently pretty much against getting the football crowds into Twickenham. Makes me laugh because the rugby boys can be pretty serious in terms of their drinking and revelry, but apparently the football crowd is not the one that Richmond wants to attract. Now, what this also opens up, though, is a big can of worms that could go quite further in terms of the FA and Wembley. Because if it isn't Twickenham, then Wembley becomes the option, as Spurs did while they were doing their rebuild of White Hart Lane. And it would mean, I think, potentially Wembley giving up the semi-finals for the FA Cup and some of the other major games they've got to allow for Chelsea to play their games and to free up some of the calendar. Now that would appease a lot of the traditionalists that we've seen recently, who want the semi-finals to come back to be played in neutral grounds and then leave Wembley for the final, which was always the tradition. Certainly I grew up with, and would welcome that opportunity. I mean, semi-finals were always played at Villa Park, at Old Trafford, even up at Middlesbrough, the old Ayresome Park, I remember them all. So it's something that actually may have unintended consequences if the FA was to actually take a longer term tenancy like Chelsea. Now, the big issue for Chelsea is, if they're going to go to Earl's Court, that they won't have to do this. But if they are going to rebuild Stamford Bridge, then they would have to do it. And they're talking about a period of 7 years. Now, 7 years is a very long time. Spurs only managed a couple of seasons at Wembley, and I think that was enough for most of the fans. And they were starting to lose interest because of the atmosphere. So I think it's a big problem for Chelsea. And I hope that from Chelsea's point of view, that they get the Earl's Court option and they don't have this dislocation, because I think that's a really big problem for 7 years to try and come to a solution, particularly if you're not welcome in Twickenham and you've got options around Wembley that may not be completely satisfactory as well. So they're stuck with a few options of where to ground share. So it's a tricky one, but it's always been hard about Stamford Bridge with the pitch owners and all these sorts of things. Any redevelopment for Chelsea has always been a very tough problem.